Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today it's time to have a look at an article from Wccftech, and it's an interview from the Gaijin CEO Anton Udintsev, basically talking about the current state of War Thunder and also the future, what is coming not just for War Thunder but also Gaijin in general. The article itself is done by Alessio Palumbo, which is an amazing name, and I think we did a video a while back actually looking at another article that he did when it came to War Thunder as well. In October 12, 2018, there was another interview with, once again, the CEO, Anton Udintsev, basically talking about the main differences when it comes to the graphical implementation of Enlisted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to link both of these articles down below. I would definitely say both of them are worth a read. They are definitely good for if you're interested in the tech side of Gaijin, and also it gives you a bit more information about the company and War Thunder and its general goals. So let's get into this one from, as I said, Alessio Palumbo, and also let's just start off with the first question. Of course, the tagline at the top of "we wouldn't have launched War Thunder in Steam's current state" got a lot of people saying stuff like, well, they would have released on the Epic Games Store instead, but that's not what is said in the answer. So what we're going to do is go through them. The first question is, new crossplay games are announced almost on a daily basis now. What's the status of your discussion with Sony on enabling full crossplay between PC, PS4 and Xbox One in War Thunder? And the answer being, new policies are not just better for crossplay, they also probably can add some limitations compared to the old ones. For instance, our PS4 players are currently able to play on PC, keeping all their progress on the same account. It looks like that won't be possible with the new policies applied. The new PlayStation crossplay policies do not prevent all cross-progression, but we're still discussing some nuances about progression, purchase transfer, and unfortunately, we aren't at liberty to talk about this in detail. So this has been an ongoing problem when it comes to the console versus PC idea in War Thunder. A lot of people see it as a competition when we should see it as a cooperation. On top of this as well, the general issue that Xbox and PlayStation in this case is two factors. They don't have full access to the Gaijin store, and they do not have full access to the Gaijin markets. This is the progression purchase transfer idea that he's talking about. If everybody had access to the market, then a lot of events would be a lot simpler, and we wouldn't have to have two systems running parallel when it comes to events and when it comes to other stuff like that. But instead, because of these new policies, it looks like that idea may be further from what we have right now. Right now, with PlayStation and also Xbox, if we want to add it in, they are able to crossplay, just not with each other. They are able to crossplay with PC, and also both sides are able to transfer their account onto PC, but you don't get the full access to stuff like the Gaijin store and also the Gaijin markets, which is the main issue of both. So it looks like here what is happening is, even though the crossplay idea is coming in full force from PlayStation, you can actually see an article from Wired, which is where I tracked back the first, talk about this full crossplay, idea. It says, this is why PlayStation Now improvements aren't even the only move Sony is making, despite handily winning the sales battle this console generation. While it's not announcing the news explicitly, the PS4's crossplay efforts have officially moved out of beta stage, meaning that the console can support crossplay on any titles that studios provide the functionality for. So you can see here that the old idea that, they can't do crossplay because, we can't protect our audience was a load of guff, and instead they were just, working on the technology behind everything. But with this announcement, it means that, everybody can crossplay with each other, so we don't have to have two parallel matchmaking systems where, Xbox players and PS4 players cannot be in the same game. But at the same time, it also means, according to Anton, is that PlayStation players may lose the right to be able to transfer or play their accounts on PC. So you can see there's a bit of give or take going on here, which is why it's not as simple as just everybody gets access to crossplay. The most beneficial thing for consumers when it comes to all of this thing, this would be the perfect scenario. So PlayStation, mainly PlayStation 4, says, okay, full crossplay is allowed. Also, you're still allowed to play on PCs with your, with your account. Also, you are allowed access to the Gaijin store and the Gaijin market, but so therefore you get access to everything that a PC player does, and also have the ability to be able to play on PS4. This is not going to happen because Sony will want to take at least some form of percentage through sales when it comes to War Thunder, and the only way they can control that is through their store. Same with Microsoft. That's why it is imperative that they keep the stranglehold on the Microsoft Store ideas. So yeah, it's just one of those things. It's very sad that it has to happen like that. And, if the idea of money was thrown out the window, this would be solved instantaneously, but that is never going to happen. The next question is, War Thunder was launched by Gaijin in August 2013. What is your medium to long-term plan for the game? Will you just update it, or is there a discussion regarding a potential sequel? A sequel? The answer is making sequels to living and evolving online games doesn't make sense. I agree. Such sequels will compete with the existing games, cannibalizing the audience and increasing waiting times in queue. War Thunder is being constantly updated with the new features, content, and gameplay modes. Each year we release more content and features for War Thunder than most premium titles usually offer. Since the game release, we have introduced not just new nations with their vehicle trees, but a whole new and completely unique gameplay experience, like ground forces, naval forces, modern jets, modern tanks. I'm not even counting new game modes, numerous graphical and content updates. There are more than 1,500 plus vehicles available in the game right now. The most recent updates included a Chinese vehicle tech tree, should be trees, the modern jets and night thermal vision support for vehicles that had them in real life, and we still have plans for adding even more cool stuff over the next years. So once again, not really talking about the future plan for War Thunder, which it would be nice to see, a little bit more of a roadmap. That's always a good idea when it comes to at least features being added. The second paragraph is completely useless here. It's just basically talking about what the game already has. The first paragraph is the one I'm going to focus on. So they're completely correct. If they made a War Thunder 2, first of all, you've got to understand that if a War Thunder 2 comes out, and let's just say it's a better experience overall, everything is better when it comes to the engine, when it comes to the gameplay, when it comes to, stuff like that. If it's a similar game, the one thing about changing over to, let's say, this pseudo War Thunder 2 is that I would lose all the progress in my in War Thunder. And that is a big issue when it comes to trying to keep a player base around. There's a big reason why, at least for me, I feel like I can only play 2 free-to-play games at the same time. Normally I play Path of Exile and War Thunder, and then maybe something like Red Faction. The problem is you have only so many hours in the day, and if, let's say, they shut down War Thunder in favor of War Thunder 2 and reset everybody's research, or reset everybody back to square one, a lot of people will be incredibly annoyed because people technically have nearly 6+ years account at this point, meaning that they've been working on this account for 6+ years, and if you just take that away from them in favor of a clean new slate, a lot of people are just going to walk away and say, well, what's the point? You've just taken away content which I enjoyed before. Now, if they instead of making 2 separate entities in the form of War Thunder and then War Thunder 2, and just take those ideas from War Thunder 2 and implement them as an update or over an update cycle for War Thunder, then you get to keep the progression, you get to keep everything, and you also have all of those shiny new features, which is basically what we see, War Thunder do since, 2013. They basically just take either new ideas, new engines, new vehicles, new functions, and then just plonk them onto the old system, and then gradually you build it up instead of making a fresh new vanilla thing over and over again. This is, if you want a concrete example of this, right, where the second game of a series cannibalizes the first game of a series, the perfect example of recent years is Destiny. So if you look at Destiny 1 compared to Destiny 2, before the free-to-play ideas of Destiny 2 have come out, Destiny 1 was completely cannibalized by Destiny 2. And this is why when they talked about this idea of having a 10-year process of content, they weren't talking about Destiny 1, they were talking about maybe Destiny 2 or 3. And this means that whenever a new game comes out of the series, it kills the old one. You see this also with Call of Duties. You also, apart from specific Call of Duties which received really well, and you also see this with Battlefield games, where a lot of people will tell you that older Battlefield games, yeah, you can still find a game, it's still got a very vibrant community. That might be correct, but if you compare it to the newest iteration of that series, it is going to be much more played than the previous iterations. It's just how it works when it comes to progression and what people want to play. So the answer here makes complete sense to me. And also they say features for War Thunder that most premium titles usually offer. I can't really quantify that, but I will say there is a lot of stuff in War Thunder which you don't see in other games. The Warbond shop, which is, updated every month, is a completely new thing that I can't even think of another game doing, where you can just play in game, do daily tasks, and you get access to stuff which you can normally pay money for, so such as, the premium vehicles. That seems to be quite a new and interesting idea. On top of this, you got the squadron vehicles idea, but also at the same time, it's kind of hard comparing two different progression systems from different games. It's if you compare like the World of Tanks progression system to War Thunder's progression system, it's just messy, right? So maybe the comparison is hard to make, but I do agree with the general points over here. It's much better to build on top of what you already have instead of starting afresh with other ideas. The next idea is, in our last chat, you mentioned that the large-scale global illumination solution you first devised for Enlisted would also be added to War Thunder. Is this still happening, and if so, when? Yes, it is still coming this year to our games. So you can see here, if you want to go and, basically see or read a PowerPoint about this really interesting technology and how it works, I've actually covered it in a previous video. When it comes to the general idea, Anton, the CEO, Anton Yudintsev, did a nice little presentation at GDC and talked about, this new real-time global illumination edition. Now, this is like a, how would you put it? This is a first in the gaming industry. So when it comes to actual technology, Gaijin are the first dev or first producer, whatever you want to call them, which has been able to create the scalable real-time global illumination. So alongside other ideas, such as, the mouse aiming ideas that Gaijin has created and many other things, they are a world leader when it comes to certain technologies, which is incredibly impressive in the overall grand scheme of things. And therefore, you can go read about the, global illumination stuff. I'm sure we're going to see this, over the either next update or the one after that, the Christmas update. I'll be incredibly surprised if we don't, because we also had that graphical update in updates 1.91 as well. But I would definitely say give this one a read when it comes to this presentation, because it dumbs it down a lot. And for a person like me who really doesn't know a lot about game design, this presentation was great at explaining what the implications of this are and also how it works. So I was very, very happy to see that. The next one is, are you planning another major technological update for your Dagor engine, Also, is there any update on your testing to port the engine to the Nintendo Switch? So this was brought up in an article, a while back, that they had a Nintendo Switch dev kit and they were fiddling around with it when it came to War Thunder. And I don't think War Thunder could be ported onto the Switch in any meaningful way. But then again, what do I know? It's definitely a technology which is, I wouldn't say foreign to me. I've read a lot about the Switch, and I just don't think it has enough power, especially when we talk about the future of War Thunder. I just don't think it has enough power to be able to keep up. The next obvious updates will be the support of modern APIs, such as DX12 and Vulkan, with a recent Microsoft initiative adding DX12 support to Windows 7, it is going to be possible to enjoy the features of the new hardware by our whole audience. Also, this will allow us to add DXRT support, so DX11 does not support DXRT or RTX, and we recently launched one of our classic Daigou-based games on the Nintendo Switch. We didn't begin with War Thunder, so the Switch Gaijin team has already started to work on the console. So they said we didn't begin with War Thunder, so that's at least the way that it's phrased there tells me that they're at least working on adding War Thunder to the Switch. So at least that'll be it'll be a new environment for people to experience the game in. And also, if Sony gets this crossplay thing sorted out, then that means that they can just come into a pre-existing set of a game population and be able to be integrated in. So obviously, more graphical updates, more access to the game when it comes to options is always beneficial to the consumer, so that's lovely to see. Speaking of Enlisted, there's been no updates on it for a while. Why is that? The game has been delayed multiple times now on both PC and Xbox One. It is not uncommon in the game industry for a game development to be late, and unfortunately, Enlisted is late. The team is working hard in order to deliver a fresh and high-quality experience in a very competitive genre. We decided to keep things low on our radars until we will have a solid alpha on our hands so that players won't be exhausted by the news. Now, I can completely understand that. As somebody who has followed games such as, I can't even remember what it's called. Was it Hell's Gate or something like that? Basically, what was supposed to be the new Men of War Assault Squad 2, but it just never. Well, it's still being developed, but it was supposed to be out, I believe, in the first quarter of 2018, and now we're in October of 2019, and it's still not looking anywhere close to done, just a bunch of devlogs every so often. So I can understand the frequency of news being annoying, but for me, the frequency of Enlisted, if you look at their actual websites, there's only been one news post this whole year, the 2nd of May 2019. This whole year. So you're talking about, what is that, 10 months at this point? So 10 months, and you've had one news post, and it's talking about real-time global illumination. The post before that is talking about the Battle of Moscow. So for me, if I completely agree that you can drown people in information, and they can kind of get sick of it. But when we're talking about a game that is in development, that a lot of people, at least that I've talked to, and also me, I am especially interested in this game, to see how it's going to do against its competitors, and is it going to be able to deliver a different experience compared to, other games. But the problem is, at the same time, I'm not hearing anything about it. And I understand you want to be able to, get on with it and get cracking and make sure it's all right, and, make sure that it is somehow revolutionary to the genre. But at the same time, a little bit of news here and there isn't a bad thing. It would be lovely to see maybe some more Q&As. It would be lovely to see some more news posts about it. Even if you only do it, let's say, bi-monthly, it's much better than once a year, which is what we have right now. So yeah. Hopefully we hear a lot more about this soon. It was kind of sad seeing that at Gamescom there was nothing, which was brought, and hopefully, yeah, we see something which is a little bit more concrete on Enlisted. I look forward to the alpha or the beta when it's ready to go. But at least for me, I'm not very good at FPSs, but I'll still enjoy it because of the World War II setting and hopefully the realistic ideas that they bring in. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. There just needs to be more news around it. Is your Gaijin Incubator Project still alive? As far as I can see, only Shadows of Kurgansk came out of it so far, and it didn't exactly get the strongest reception. Yes, there is another title coming to closed beta probably later this year. There were several other titles that received funding. Unfortunately, not all of them have managed to deliver a product. So if you don't know, the Gaijin Incubator project is this one. And this was posted, I'm not exactly sure, but this is on the old website of Gaijin. So it's at least from like 2014, 2013, maybe 2015, not exactly sure. But the main thing is the incubator program is a way that Gaijin could look at smaller studios and basically say, hey, do you need funding? Or hey, do you need publicity? Or hey, do you need some help from some of our professionals to be able to build your game? Like, let's say you have a great idea and you have a small team, but you don't have the necessary resources to be able to make that a reality. The whole point of the incubator program was to make that a reality. Now, there hasn't, as said here, there hasn't been a lot of stuff come out of it, but it is still there for people to use. And you can even see here Xbox One is not even listed on the as a platform, because I'm pretty sure Xbox One was not truly a thing at this point. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things which would be lovely to see more of, and obviously it's Gaijin's attempt to get into the publishing realm of things instead of just the development realm of things, because Gaijin Entertainment is not just a developer, it is also a publisher of many different games. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll see some other stuff. What's the current size of Gaijin as a development studio? Do you plan to get bigger in order to take on even more projects in the future? The War Thunder development team is currently about 100 people. We also have other smaller internal teams working on other unannounced projects. So hopefully we see some more stuff in the future when it comes to those unannounced projects. The development team currently being 100 people, I don't think that just includes developers. I think that also includes PR. I think that includes, marketers and managers and all of that stuff. But if that is 100 crew of developers, that's probably one of the biggest sets of developers in the gaming industry, which isn't a AAA title. So yeah, I'd be very surprised if that's the case. But overall, it seems to have stayed it seems to have stayed the same size for a very long time, with not a ton of expansion. I think they quoted similar numbers a few years ago when it came to the team. PC is the most important platform in Russia. What's your take on the subject of Epic Games Store and its aggressive markets offering based on the acquisition of timed exclusives? Would you ever accept for one of your games to be a timed exclusive on EGS if they paid you reasonably well? So the answer to this is, well, our main sales channel as Gaijin is our own website. Generally speaking, any competition is a good thing for the industry on the whole, including developers and gamers. Timed exclusives is a very typical way for a platform to be competitive, and we have seen that for years on console, and now we are seeing it on the PC market as well. As a platform for online games, Steam has several long-time unresolved issues and very small added values. Things like CDN, cloud saves, and forums are obviously not applicable to online games. They usually already have all these anyway. To name a few, currently it is an overcrowded store with very small visibility, a complete inability to track leads, and so the inability to use performance marketing, lack of A/B tests, and general options to customize game pages. Although we do have War Thunder launched on Steam, That launch was done a long time ago, when Steam actually exposed games to a broad audience. In Steam's current state, we wouldn't have launched this game on Steam at all, regardless of the appearance of EGS. Most users that we have there, we brought there ourselves, and Steam just gets its rather big commission, benefiting from our efforts. As for EGS, they currently have some obvious advantages: better visibility, customizable game pages, and a smaller commission. At the same time, they haven't launched any free-to-play third-party titles that do performance marketing, so we have yet to see if they will allow lead tracking. Anyway, let's hope that companies will learn something from their rival strengths, overcome their weaknesses, and will be living in a better world tomorrow. I would like to emphasize that for the online games that aim for a big success, paid reasonably well for exclusivity parts, such as sales guarantees, is not important. Successful online games like War Thunder operate for years. No reasonable upfront payment is really important. Of course, I imagine that for smaller studios and premium titles, this payment can be a life or death question, as the distributor covers all the risks and pays a long tail of sales up front. Yeah, this is basically how, Gaijin is a pretty large studio, if we're being honest, when it comes to game development. They're also their own pseudo-publisher, pseudo-developer, and also pseudo-advertiser, because, they basically just do everything. Very similar to somebody like EA, in a way, even though maybe not as big. The main points that they bring up here are incredibly important. So even without other alternatives, they probably today wouldn't have, launched on Steam. And me as a consumer, it's always nice to have more options when it comes to where I purchase my products. And one thing on Steam that I see is packs which are available on Steam but not available anywhere else. And the only question for me is, if that was the case, would those packs be available in other places, especially when they get discounted for sales and stuff like this? On top of that issue, it does say, as they said, they wouldn't have launched the game on Steam at all, regardless of the appearance of EGS, showing that they've seen this investment in Steam, and I believe Steam takes a 30% cut of all sales when it comes to their products, which is incredibly large when you think about it. It might be 30, it might be lower, it probably is lower, if I'm honest. 30% seems a little bit high, but the fact is, if they are already doing the majority of their business through their own websites, what would be the requirement for Steam? Well, the only requirement is for visibility. And as I said here, with the increasing years on Steam, the visibility has decreased, and therefore it is not as useful for them as a place to be able to advertise their games. So they're not seeing the Steam platform as a monetization option. They're seeing it as an advertisement platform, and it's not being able to do its job in that regard. Now, with the increase in other stuff, so the Epic Games Store, with the increase in stuff such as independent launchers, so you'll see obviously Uplay, Rockstar now have their own independent launcher, all of these things, hopefully that means that Steam will be able to keep itself as an industry leader by improving some of the problems which developers have brought up. Because Steam, from a consumer's point of view, is incredible. Like, it's the best platform you could have asked for, apart from some of the features missing, of course. But if you compare it to every other platform, it is so much better for the consumer than anywhere else. But the problem that is being brought up here is that it is not as beneficial for the developer or for the publisher to be able to put their games on Steam. So that needs to be addressed. And yes, I know the majority of the time, at least for me, I'm very much consumer focused, but at the same time, there has to be bones thrown to the developers and publishers to be able to give that to make that consumer experience the best that it can be. And competition is always the way forward with that. If there is no competition for Steam, therefore, Steam will not get better and it will stagnate. Whereas if there is competition in the market, then there is something to compete against, therefore they have to get better over time, otherwise they will lose market share. So even though I I strongly have a massive dislike for stuff like the Epic Games Store and what Epic Games are doing. I think exclusivity is a bane on any industry when it comes to gaming. I don't like it how, in order to play God of War, I have to be able to buy a PlayStation. I don't like the fact that the NHL game, is not available on PC. I do not like this exclusivity idea. I don't like the fact that the new Call of Duty has a specific mode that is only exclusive to PlayStation for a timed period. This, to me, is sickening when it comes to the consumer side of things. And as Anton says, unless it's a decent sum of money, it doesn't really matter for a game like War Thunder. The way that a game like War Thunder succeeds is by getting more bums on seats to actually play the game overall, and then you get people who start putting money into the game. Upfront sales of War Thunder are a lot less important than keeping a very active, popular community. So therefore, a one-off payment doesn't really do anything for that side. Once again, he's at least from the answer here, he's looking at it much more as an advertising avenue instead of a payment avenue. So he increases the longevity of the game instead of worrying about the money aspect, which I think is the way to do it. The next question is, Google is about to enter the games industry with its cloud-only platform, Stadia, promising not only much greater accessibility, but also unique hardware capabilities due to its data center structure. What do you think of Stadia so far? Gaijin have been supporters of the idea of cloud gaming for a long time, starting from OnLive. Stadia offers good hardware and distributed data centers, so it's a step in the right direction. However, they are not currently launching free-to-play games, so I think they should do it. So that, to me, is a clear indication that Gaijin wants to get in on Stadia when it comes to War Thunder. I think it would be, a good thing to add. Stadia, I just don't think the internet base is there yet when it comes to the connections that you require for for online gaming. I'm very much worried about the latency. I'm very much worried about I suppose you'd call it the mouse lag of something like Stadia, but we'll have to see. I don't think it's up to par yet when it comes to, you have to make the latency one-to-one. And for a lot from the stats that they've put out there, they have not put out the required information needed for me to believe that they are able to create that one-to-one experience, or at least incredibly close to that one-to-one experience. But it does mean that people on lower-end machines could play at the higher end, which would get rid of the ULQ issue if you paid a monthly fee to Google Stadia, which to me is another problem within itself. I think, at least from a membership point of view, there's only a few things I'm okay with paying monthly nowadays, and that would be a service like Netflix and other services. But when it comes to gaming, there are so many options for me in the free-to-play sector. It doesn't really make sense to go into a membership scheme. Lastly, the next generation of consoles loom on the horizon. Sony and Microsoft have already released some early specifications of their AMD-based systems. The ultra-fast SSD storage stands out, which some developers believe will radically change the way open-world games are designed. What do you think about this and the systems as a whole? I'm not sure how much I can reveal publicly. Let's just say I'm very excited about the features and capabilities of a new console generation. So there you go. That means that they are at least working with the new console generation, which I'm personally looking forward to. An increase in technology is always a good thing. It pushes games along, and it means that if you have games which are cross-platform, they can all move forward together instead of having to wait for stuff like the consoles to catch up. At the same time, the ultra-fast SSD storage, this is something I believe that's been available on PC for at least 4 years at this point, if we look at the current levels of what they're adding into the consoles. So therefore, I don't think it stands out. I just think it's another capability that the consoles are getting a lot, a lot slower than the PCs, but it means that, you know, the sides will be more comparable. Overall, this has been generally a good set of questions. I think it definitely pinpoints some interesting things that people want to talk about, mainly the stuff about Enlisted and also the future. Would have been nice to get a bit more, as I said, a roadmap for War Thunder would be great, but unfortunately right now we don't really have one as a consumer base, and for me that is something that needs to be worked on in the next year, just to show, you know, this is what we're doing, or this, even if it's just really generic goals like more maps, or maybe a certain amount of tech trees, just something like that, which, you know, we can cogitate from, and just try and enjoy looking at the progression of War Thunder in itself, instead of having to second guess everything that is required. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Mopar 1969, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyins Terry, and Elove Goats, and of course Seductive Trash Can for supporting the channel.